ever wondered how to keep your team together when the going gets tough? Well, grab your notebook and maybe your Apple Watch, but only if you promise to put it away during your one on ones. Because today, Jay Patterson and I are talking all about mastering resilience, building trust, and leading with authenticity, whether you're walking the floor or zooming from afar. So get ready for some honest laughs, real talk about leadership struggles, and plenty of tips to help you navigate tricky team dynamics like a pro. Welcome to We've All Done It, the podcast for leaders who get the work done, but find the people part of leading frustrating. I'm Kimberly Benoit, author, award-winning former corporate executive, and leadership coach. With over 20 years in the corporate world, I've seen it all, the good, the bad, and the downright messy. If you've ever avoided a tough conversation, played favorites without realizing it, or just wondered, why is leading people so hard? You're in the right place because we've all done it. This is your space for real talk, real solutions, and no judgment. Together, I'll share practical strategies to help you navigate workplace drama, build stronger teams, and lead with confidence. No more pretending, no more suffering in silence, just honest, actionable leadership from someone who's been in your shoes. Are you ready to lead differently? Let's do this. Welcome back, listeners. I am so excited to have you here today because we are going to be talking about a lot of really fun stuff with my guest, Jay Peterson. And we're going to be really getting into talking about resilience and growth and how to navigate challenging situations, challenging teams, how when you have to be the messenger of bad news, how do you do that and not lose the team? Just a few things that we're going to hop into today. So if you found yourself in any one of those positions, we got a lot to cover today. So Jay, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here, Kimberly.
Let's go ahead. Before we jump in, I always like to let everyone tell us a little bit about yourself so that you can boast on the things that you are most proud of.
Certainly. And I'll just go what I'm unique for. Number one, I'm from North Dakota originally, which makes me a unicorn. I was raised in a law enforcement agriculture family, and I have over 60 cousins that I can still name in order all the way down the line. So my mom had a large family. Anyhow, when I turned 17, I joined the Navy and I joined the US Navy Submarine Force, and I was out of there as quick as I could be. And I would still be in the Navy right now riding submarines, but for some odd reason, I found a bride around 39 years ago, and then kids came, and then I moved into the corporate world. So since then, I've been working with turnaround companies, mergers and acquisitions, and I work with people in organizations that want to focus and grow.
Yeah. So there's a lot in your background that I find really fascinating. One of the things, whenever you're talking about turnaround situations or coming into teams that are dealing with a lot of stress, so this could apply to your military background, it can definitely apply to your corporate background. The theme I've seen a lot and kind of the things I've read is resilience shows up a great deal for you. So talk to me a little bit about why that's such a passion for you.
I truly believe that, again, challenges in your life just make you stronger. And I think the big key is just like when I was in the military and again, getting out of it. When I was in the military, you could change things very quickly. It would be like, it would take you 3 to 6 months to turn something, make it work. But then when you get on the outside, it'll take you anywhere from 12 months, 18 months, 24 months. It's resilience and patience. You take what you learn and then you just build upon it and move forward. But I think adversity is the big thing. When you run into challenges, learn from them, move on. Don't sit there and dwell on it.
That sounds easy. That you make it sound like you just flip a switch and you're like, that sucked, move on. But I don't know if it's that easy for everyone. So how do you help the people that you work with, the people that you lead, navigate stuff that really burns? Because for a lot of people, I think when you talk about adversity, it can feel very personal. It has tremendous implications on your life. So how do you help them navigate that?
And Kimberly, I think it's understanding, again, being in their shoes. You got to understand the people when you're talking to them, whether you're coaching them, mentoring, working with them in a corporate environment. Everybody's different. Like you said, They sit there and, why are you still bitter about that? Why don't you get over it? And it's a lot of times it's asking the 5 why, but just sitting there and helping them drill into it, because you're not going to fix it for them. Okay. You can never fix it for them. They have to fix it themselves. And that's not saying it's easy for me either, because you carry things your entire life where it's hard to deal with it. And until you really decide to move on, you're not going to move on. I think again, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to go still. You have to have patience. You have to sit down, but at the same time, you got to be very inquisitive to understand, why do they feel that way? And what have you done about it? And what could you do about it? And it doesn't do you any good to sit here and worry about it, because worry really does you no good. Let's just move on. But people got to decide to do it on their own timetable. But all you can do is prod them along and ask the proper questions to see, so maybe they can see it a little differently.
So what I'm hearing you say is your advice to leaders is to be very curious.
Oh, yes. Curiosity. It might have killed the cat, but I tell you what, it'll drive you to a lot of things. And that's why I say it's like, I always sit there just asking that question over and over again, but different ways. It's just because people will put up their wall. I don't want anybody to get into my wall, but, be around it. Again, ask it a different way. Let's go a little bit differently and bring up a different subject, come back to it. But yes, it is being very curious. And it's back to, you have 2 ears, you got 2 eyes, you got 1 mouth. Listen, let them talk. A lot of times that is the whole key, is people just want somebody to listen to them.
I think one of the things that is really important is not just listening, but being authentic in the listening. One of the topics that I've brought up a great deal is that we as leaders are drawn and pulled in so many directions all the time. And I will admit that I have been completely guilty of this. Like, when you're sitting there and you have a team member in front of you that has a legitimate concern, a legitimate challenge, whatever, and my phone is dinging, I can see emails hitting in the box, like somebody's knocking on the door. Back in the days when we were all in office, somebody's knocking on the door because they need to ask me something, and I'm not 100% attending to the person who's sitting on the other side of me. And so I could be asking the right questions, but if I'm not actively listening to what's being said to me and actually giving the person on the other side of me that respect and that attention, you can ask all the right questions, but if it's what I go back to, it's not the what, it's the how. If you are not doing it in a way that indicates that you really actually care about what they have to say, and that you're going to actually do something with the information they're sharing with you, I think that as leaders, that sounds really easy. So I want to I want to be honest. What I'm saying sounds really easy. It is not. To put that cell phone away, to maybe take that Apple Watch off. Apple Watches are the worst. It's like Pavlov's dogs. I watch it all the time, both in work situations and personal situations. And it's the quickest way to, without necessarily meaning to, but it's the quickest way to communicate a dismissive tone of, you're not as important as whatever buzz just happened on my wrist. So I'm hearing what you're saying, but I also want to layer that on, because I think that genuineness is so critical when you have a team member, particularly any team member, but I would say specifically if it's team members that you actually want to keep and support, and those high potential, that talent that makes your team work, you have to show up 100%. And you've got to, even if it's for 5 minutes, you got to double down on that time so that they feel you, see you, and that, to go back what you said, they feel heard, they feel respected, they feel really seen. Is this episode hitting a nerve? Are you facing complex people challenges and have tried leadership books, workshops, and the advice from everyone, and somehow it's still not working? Now imagine having a trusted leadership partner who understands your specific challenges and strengths. My one-on-one leadership program provides the support you need with a customized plan. If you'd like to learn more, click on the link in the show notes and book some time with me. I'll explain how it works. Now back to the show.
And I agree 100%. I think a lot of times you'll hear, oh, I have an open door policy. Sure, you have an open door policy, and we have a set meeting time. I walk in the door and you're sitting there typing away doing email while we're talking. And again, it's back to perception or reality of that authenticism. Okay. Because
Yeah.
I agree. It's very clear when people are not there in the present. Let's put it that way. It's just very clear. And it doesn't matter. They don't have to be typing. They don't have to be doing this. They don't have to be doing that. It's just facial expressions and body language, things of that sort. And that's why it is very important that somebody comes and raps on your door and they go, can we talk? You have your computer over there on this side so that you are paying attention to them 100%. And that's one of the big things, one of my biggest recommendations. If you want to engage with your people, because right now engagement is at a 10-year low. Gallup poll came out with 31% U.S. employees are engaged. Okay. Yeah. So if you want to find a path to get engaged with your people, I sit here, and this is always a recommendation, no matter where I go, is you walk the floor, you walk the building. In the morning, you have it on your calendar. You go out there and you hit people and you talk to them and you really listen to them. And I carry a notebook because I got Swiss cheese going on a lot of times. I sit there and I see the picture of Bobby's little kids. One plays soccer. I write down my notes so I have it there. And the thing is, it is authentic because I care about them. I want them to be a team member that feels like they're valued. And in today's environment, I think that's so big, even since a good chunk of people aren't in the office anymore. So how do you provide value to people over Zoom? Huh?
We can talk about that because that's a generational difference that you and I have, is that I have seen people do what you say. I have seen leaders walk the cubes. There's no floor. There were cubes. And what I would tell you is I would argue that was their engagement strategy. And it was the laziest thing I ever saw in my life, because they would walk in the morning. Hey, how are you doing today? All right. So what are we working on today? And then they would go into their office, and then I wouldn't see them again until the end of the day, when they'd walk back around with a different beverage in their hand. And let me clarify. Did I think that they thought they were being authentic in the moment? Yes, I do. I genuinely think that in their minds, they thought they were engaging with me. I would tell you no, because the truth of it is, engagement for me was when I had my one-on-one with you and I came in there with legitimate, I need things from you. I need guidance from you. I need support from you. And that was when the engagement actually took place. I felt like the other stuff was niceties, but it didn't actually make me want to stay or make me feel more or less valued. That's great. You remembered my cat's name. Awesome. But if you're not able to double down on I have a massive hurdle in being successful in a deliverable, and I have tried everything I can do. So I want to challenge that a little bit. I want to make sure I hear what you're saying, and I agree that you have to make time for your people, but the way you make time, how you make time for your people is really important. Just walking the cubes, walking the floor. It's got to be more meaningful than that, candidly.
And I won't disagree with you. It's a balancing act, okay? Because like you said, I need something. You told me you were going to do something for me a week ago. You didn't do it for me, okay?
Yeah.
So number one, you've already blown the trust factor, okay? That's big. But the key is, I think, again, I think it's a balancing act of different things that you can do to engage with people. And I do believe, if somebody knocks on your door, you put the stuff away. What do you need? And then you set expectations between each other so that if this isn't resolved, you still run into this problem all the time where I've heard it, just tell me what your problems are and I'll take care of them. 6 months ago, I told you this. 5 months ago, I told you this. 4 months ago, I told you this. So it is a balancing act. But I believe if you're locked up in your office, though, all the time, and you're out there understanding the challenges that people have out on the floor, and in cubicles or whatever. Yeah. I think, and the thing is, you're observing and you're hearing too when you're going around. And so it's more than just that FaceTime when you go into that cube or go into that work area. The thing is, that's common territory there. Now, some people might think you're spying on me too. I better put my phone away.
So we're about to get, because I want to bring back the whole, how do you engage in a virtual environment. Because I want to talk about, like, when I was leading teams, I have led teams in person, I've led teams virtually before COVID.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I want to be very clear, because everybody
Yep.
thinks this remote stuff was pandemic related, and that is a complete falsity.
Great.
So I want to back up a bit that
Yep.
I was leading team members virtually way before COVID, and it requires a different strategy. And because I want to make sure, like, I did that. I walked the floor with team members, and let me be very clear. Is there an opportunity to personally connect with people in walking? We'll just call it walking the floor. Yes, there is. But I would never want someone to think that's an engagement strategy. That is just one thing that you have to think about in order to really show up for your team as a meaningful leader. So, because there's purpose in it. Like, I learned a lot. Like, I had team members, and I know some of them listen in this, they'll probably crack up about this, but they had a whiteboard between their cubes, and one of them, like, really had never seen any classic movies, and another one was, like, trying to grow their music influence. So people from all over our floor would come and write, like, movies. Have you seen this one? And then, like, on Monday morning, we would have a debrief over what movie he had watched and what he thought. And then the same thing with music. And so it became like, so there was a lot of community building that is important, that you want to have, where people feel like the environment they're coming into is friendly, it's not hostile. Like, we do care about you beyond just the product that you deliver. So but just know that's a part of it. Because my fear is, I've seen people think that is enough. It is not enough. Just for listeners out there, particularly new leaders, or if you're a struggling leader, like, you're probably gonna have to adjust your strategy. But going into the virtual stuff, but before I go, I look like you had a thought. I want to make sure I didn't cut you off from a thought.
Oh, no, continue. This is good. This is very good because, again, there are many ways to achieve this, and I'm very interested in hearing because you are correct. This has been going on much longer than COVID, and it's just that the technology's gotten better.
Yeah, I would say definitely technology has gotten better, but I was a remote worker for periods of time, like, in the early 2000s. So, and I was a very engaged employee before I moved into leadership. So I would just say, or at least in that moment, in that role, I think a lot of it comes down to, let me back up. So here's things I have seen happen, and it's stuff I've heard that I've heard from people. So one is that when we went to virtual, leaders didn't know what their team was doing, because they were using their walk around as a means to track productivity. And they didn't have another engagement strategy. Right. That was their whole strategy. And so
Understood.
What I would say is, in virtual, you have to work harder. You have to over communicate more. I do believe, like, actually seeing people's faces via whatever virtual platform you're using. Do you need it on all the time? No. There's always funny ones when things were really in the thick of the pandemic and people had kids at home, and there was, like, a kid vomiting in the back, and there's a dog going on. Like, life was happening and we had to make accommodations. So sometimes turning that camera off is a gift. But what I would say is, you're going to have to be way more intentional with your one-on-ones, and you can't be distracted. Like, you got to be there. Going back to your nonverbal cues, there's a big difference via virtual. If I am facing you, I have good light on my face, you can see my eyeballs, than if it is too dark, or if you see me doing this a lot, because I'm staring at my second screen. So from a leadership perspective, you have to engage, you have to overdo it to a certain extent. And you got to communicate not just via Zoom. It comes down to, like, messages. How do you check in? So instead of the walk around, how do you maybe send an IM and say, hey, good morning, how you doing today? You're still doing the same thing. You're just doing it in a different format. And like I said, you can't you have to have meaningful ways to track productivity that isn't the walking the floor. You have to really know who your team members are, what they're doing, and have other ways of tracking it, so that when you're engaging, it's not your only strategy.
I'm going to agree with you because again, it's a balancing act. I had around 400 technicians out in the field. Okay. And it's hard to, let alone talk to the managers, but have a routine of actually reaching out to those technicians. And I tried once a year to be able to actually go out and have lunch with them and spend that one-on-one time with them because it is key. There are so many different ways to truly try to make a point that I do want to know what your challenges are. I do want to understand what you're doing. And it's little things like, for instance, how many thank you notes have you written? They're on a date. It's old fashioned.
Yeah.
But I do it. I keep a pile of thank you notes always with me because that way I can drop on her. How many thank you notes do you send to their families saying, this guy works, he's on call 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. We appreciate what he does, which means more than, again, it's just how do you get that point across? And then it goes back to the motivation and inspiring people, because that's mainly probably for me, the reason why, like I say, people need to do that walkabout, okay, or whatever. It's not for productivity. It's not for productivity. You're looking for things when you're out there and you're listening, but the key is what's really going on? So I understand what challenges these people have instead of, we gave them this, everything should be great now. And not understanding that, here, I gave them a new checklist so I can understand what their challenges are, but they don't have time to fill out the checklist. It's, again, so I think, again, it's a balancing, it's numerous things that you can do, and it's not the same for any two people. That's the thing. It is not the same.
I agree with that completely. And so take that same example of when you're walking around, you're listening, you're paying attention. It's not always what people say. It's maybe how their nonverbals, which become important. And because I want to be able to tie that to the virtual, because again, it's because you're talking about true blue collar working that is going to be in the field, right? They're going to be out there. And there's a chunk of the workforce that, for my listeners who are like, that's great if you have that. But if I am virtual, how do I do that? It's the same thing. So when you are in a Zoom meeting, how many people have their cameras on? How many people have their cameras off? Even after you ask to please put the cameras on, how many people keep their cameras off? When they are on camera, are they engaged? Are they not? Can you clearly tell that they are checked out somewhere else? And then when you see that things, and if you ask for information, so use the checklist. Hey, we rolled out this checklist. I just want to get some feedback. What's going well? What's not? What's going well? What's not? Like, what feedback do I need to send up the ladder? If you hear crickets, that's a problem. That doesn't mean there's nothing wrong. That means that there's some other issue. And then that's where you have to double down on reaching out to individuals and saying, hey, I just want to follow up with you. I value your input. You always usually give really good feedback about stuff, but you didn't say anything. So talk to me. What's happening? So you can do the same thing. It's just the amount of effort you're putting forth is going to look different.
Definitely. Trying to get people engaged and to actually make them think that you empathize with them. And on top of that, I'm trying to empower you to do what you need to do, and then getting them across that finish line. It takes a lot of different techniques. And the key is normally people try one or two, and that's it.
They give up. I think sometimes it's pure exhaustion. In all fairness, leading is hard.
Ways,
I
both
tell
ways.
people this all the time.
Yeah, and it's both ways. It's going up and it's going down, because I asked that person this question. They didn't give me a straight up answer, so I'm not going to ask them again. Why would you do that? There's a reason why they're not answering you. Or if you're just don't ask yes, no questions. If you ask yes, no questions, you're never going to learn a thing. So
is it good? Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And is everything, do you love your job? Yes, I do. Okay, wonderful. Let me move on. But no, I agree with virtual, because I've had both office settings. I've had every which way. And the virtual side it is a different way to have to operate. And But at the same time, you do have to work harder virtually than you
Yes.
do if you're working in the office, because there's already this kind of that overture about it where it's, I don't know what they're doing. I know they made it to the meeting, but I don't know what they're doing as soon as we get off the meeting, and I'm still waiting for this, and I don't know why I don't have it yet. But if I push them on it, then all they say is yes or no.
Well, but that comes down to, again, how
Yeah.
are you tracking the productivity of your team?
Oh, yeah.
And because I've heard a lot of that. They need to come back into the office because I don't know what they're doing. How would you know what they were doing
Yes,
before?
you do. Then they do.
Like,
They know what they're
how
doing.
would you know what they were doing before? I would walk around and I'd see what was on their screen. And I'm like, yeah, and the minute you walked away, what do you think they were doing? So I challenge people a great deal.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think any medium is easier because I do think generationally, like, things have shifted to, I think, older generations, and I'll consider myself in that number because I feel like I'm in this seesaw of a place because I've lived in full office environments where there was really no social, there was no Zoom. Like, I remember what was it we did where you would dial in and then everybody was just on the phone.
Phone conferences.
Yes. And then, but now, like, to being full virtual where you are never seeing a person. And then how are you driving productivity and engagement and having to be very successful in doing so? So I've been in both worlds, and I'll say I think both have their challenges. And the issue I would say for anybody listening out there is you as a leader have to get really good at being uncomfortable because you're going to have to try things. And I would say earlier in my career, I remember like working with different people and it was like, hey, here's the leader. This is their style. You have to accommodate their style. We have shifted over the course of time I've been a professional. We don't need to name the years, but we have shifted to where it is now more of a leader. You have a very diverse team and you need to meet your team members where they are. And you also need to make sure it's productive, it's profitable, and people are engaged. And so the dynamics have changed a great deal. And so I think like the more generational, which I think diversity is good in a workplace, but I think the more generations you have, you're going to have to work harder no matter where you are. Because younger people are very comfortable in the virtual space, whereas I would think some older generations are not. And so you're going to have to get very comfortable in navigating the difference.
And I will say generationally, it does matter because even myself, I still like to, if it's something critical, I like to do face to face. People don't understand that. I think if you're going to sit down and if you really want to make a point, that it's face to face. I've always believed that. And I still believe that. But I also
That's
know
like a
that
tell for you that somebody's in trouble then. Like you've just given yourself up.
And that's an adjustment I've had to make. And I probably learned that most when I worked for IBM a few years ago.
Yeah.
Because that was my exposure to, a much younger generation there.
Yeah.
You had people that had been around, but you had so many younger people. And that's what I learned. Everything I've heard is wrong. These guys are working. They're really good. I want them to do my budget because they watch every penny and they look online for everything. And again, that goes back to, there's things that you look at people. The number one issue in the world, still, you can't run anything. You can't do anything, even with AI, without people and the right people on top of it. And if you don't trust your people, then you got the wrong people or you're in the wrong place yourself. One of the two. Okay.
I would agree with that completely. Yeah. I just want to give a shout out because I know some of my former employees listen. I will honestly say, draw a line in the sand that some of my hardest working team members that I have ever led were millennials and Gen Z. Like they worked so hard and they were outperforming other people. So I say this all the time. I was like, I'm sure there's a reason for the stereotypes. I never experienced it. If anything, like they made me feel like I should maybe be doing more. And so I just want to give a shout out that we should not be stereotyping generations.
I think, again, there's issues in every generation.
Yeah.
Period.
And there's outliers in every generation.
Exactly. And that's why I say I don't think you can just pin somebody and go, this is what's going on here. The differences are really it's comfort with technology. That seems to be the primary, and comfort in different ways of communication. And that's why, like you said earlier, okay, I like face to face if it's critical. Again, that means that the world's coming to an end if he's showing up. And
Somebody thinks they're getting fired. That's what they
and I have to admit that when in field service, I have this to it, but if they knew I was in a state, people would sometimes worry. He's in California. Worry. Okay. Most of the time, no, but there were situations, right? I get that. And that's why, again, in so many ways, you've got to understand. You have to engage with people to understand what inspires and motivates. That's my whole point is if you don't take the time to do that, they're not going to take the time to get to know you either and understand what do you want. They're just going to come in, punch in, do what they're told to do, including, I don't care what level it is or what generation it is. And then they're going to punch out and leave.
Oh, and let me be very clear. And I want to say this because I think we have moved into this place of everybody needs to go above and beyond. And I think there is a role for people who show up, do a good job, and go home. Because I would disagree. So Gallup has a certain way that they calculate things. And I think people who just show up and do a great job and don't really ask much, don't really say anything, doesn't necessarily mean they're not engaged. Because it comes down to what incentivizes a person to show up every day. And let's be honest, some people, it's just a job. And that should be okay. Where you just want to be mindful of is when that just a job, when their performance slides, when people start doing things out of character, or they're just not showing up in the same way that they have. I would encourage you, because I'm going to use you as an example, is be mindful of your tendencies too. So do you only meet with people in person when it's like for negative feedback, like critical, constructive, like you're not delivering? Because what that does do is anytime you want to show up in person, you create anxiety.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know your tendencies? And then one, is that the tendency you want to have? Is that what you want people? Because some people want that. If I'm showing up, they know the hammer's coming down. That may be part of your leadership style. It would not be mine, but it may be somebody else's. And if it works for you, awesome. But I would just say that, to your point, I think we can't make everybody be happy rainbow people, like rainbow in the sense of like super excited, there every day, like bubble gum and sunshine. That's not real. That's not reality. And I want people to realize what engagement really is, is people showing up consistently in some consistent manner and doing their job to the best of their ability. And so what you should worry about is when that shifts, when you feel the tone shift, when the body language and the facial expressions change. You really, you should know why that's happening. But if you don't, you really need to get very curious very quickly.
Agree. And it may not even be work related.
And sometimes it isn't.
Exactly.
Again, because there's not a difference between work life and personal life. They totally bleed into each other.
And that's why I'll throw it to you. You got to understand the world where I came from. You took 130 people and put them in a sewer pipe and stuck them under the water. Okay. Basically, that was it. 130 people that they don't know each other.
Talk about pressure.
They've all arrived at different times. And again, it is a social experiment, period. Okay. And you have to understand, because there is no room for people not to do their job. Yeah. There is no room for people not to be engaged. Again, and my point is...
It is the military, so it is a slightly different thing.
Yeah. But at the same time, you have to live with what you have.
Correct.
And you have to be able to, you can't increase their pay.
Yeah.
Okay. You can't. You're underway, or you got to figure out ways to understand them so that you can, again, it's just like what the first submarine I was on, they made us shave our beards off. Okay. One guy's wife never seen him without a beard. And we came back, we were on a deployment, they made him shave. She divorced him. And it was like, and we didn't understand what was going on with him. And I'm serious, as a heart attack. And it was just
That's intense.
It was intense. That's why I'm saying. So you've got all these different things and geographic differences too. It's not only demographic. I mean, it's everything that you're dealing with. And that's why it is so important for you to understand the people that work for you and you work for them. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a two-way street. If you're
Yeah.
not able to meet in the middle, you're not going to be successful as a leader. And that's
Yeah.
why we have so many toxic environments out there, because again, it is the idea of it's my way or the highway. And that mentality is gone, even though companies still continue to do it to this day.
Well, I think they try. But that's the reason why Gallup has the results they have. And we're in an interesting time where I think the power shifts. Like during the pandemic, the employees had more of the power. I think corporations got really tired of that and are really trying to double down and regain some of that power with some of the shifts we're seeing right now. I don't know where we're going to land on it, but what I hope what our conversation today has sparked for people is that as a leader, you are not helpless. And there are things that you absolutely can control and own and do, whether it's in person or virtual, to show up as a genuine, authentic human to your team and to try to engage with them in a really meaningful way, because that is the reality. As leaders, we can't magically promote everybody. We can't magically give you raises. But what we can try to do is to try to be good advocates for our team and to try to make sure that we're helping create the space that you need to do your job well. And we can't do that if we don't know what's actually going on with someone.
That's correct. And that's why sometimes it's the smallest things in the world that make all the difference.
Yeah.
I got to leave 5 minutes early. You've done everything you had to do. Get out of here. It's as simple as that. But they have to be able to talk to you about it.
Yeah. They have to feel like you're approachable.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's hard work. It's hard work to be able to bridge these gaps. But it's worth every moment of it.
I can't tell you how many people that who got into leadership, and like the first things they say is, "This is exhausting. I didn't realize I didn't realize like where I was actually spending my time." I think there's a like some kind of misnomer or misunderstanding of what leadership is. And I tell people all the time, you're going to be spending almost all your time on one of 3 P's: people, politics, and policy. Because you have to be an expert at all 3 of those for success. And if you think you're going to have time to go do something, because I see so many people who think they can still contribute, be individual contributors and lead large teams. And it's just simply not possible, because those 3 elements will fill your entire calendar every single day. But again, like it's our job to figure out how to navigate that and then to continue to try to ask for what we need and to be, as I said, as authentic and genuine in how we show up for other people. But I want to be mindful of time. I am so grateful. This has been such a fun conversation.
Great.
And I think it's, like I said, this is such an important thing. Like I feel leaders are stretched so far and there's so much being asked of them. And hopefully our mumblings have generated some excitement for people and some ideas. But with that in mind, is there one final thought or insight you would love to share with the listeners?
Laid it out a little earlier, all comes down to trust, bi-directional trust. But I'm going to make another thing because you just prompted me. Okay.
Ooh.
There is a big
What you got
difference between leadership and management.
Yeah.
Okay. And unluckily, a lot of times people think leadership is management. Okay. And the thing is, that is a major difference. And in my mind, I just want to thank you for bringing that up, because that to me it's so big. And that's what we have to work on, is people being leaders. There's a lot of managers out there, but be a leader, be engaged. And I love that you gave me a 5th P for my P's, politics. I didn't think of that one. I love it.
Yep.
But it's so true. True. But again, trust your people. If you don't trust your people, either you're in the wrong seat or they're in the wrong seat, one or the other, and empower them to do their job.
So if people are interested in knowing more about you, learning more about what you do and how you serve organizations, where would you like for them to find you?
I would just right now, my website is on instruction. So reach out to jayspeaking.com
All
or
right.
excuse me, jayspeaking@gmail.com. I'll get this right sooner or later.
No, we're going to have it in the show notes and I'll make sure that it's linked
Beautiful.
so people can find you. I understand. I'm
Yeah.
in the middle of a website migration right now myself. It is so much fun. Technology is great until it isn't working. And then suddenly you got to come up with plan B. No, but Jay, I
Yeah.
genuinely appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your thoughts and just having a wonderful conversation to help others. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I've got two things before I let you go. One, if you've ever gotten any value from the show, please leave a 5-star review. It really helps and absolutely makes my day. The second thing is if you have any thoughts you'd like to share with me, please shoot me an email at podcast@KimberlyJBenoit.com. I'd love to hear from you. All right, see you in the next episode.